Bueno, hola a todos, bienvenidos a este primer capítulo, primera charla del año del podcast Product Sessions en Product Hub. Product Hub es la comunidad de líderes de producto en Latinoamérica. Y el día de hoy vamos a conversar con Sean Ellis. Sean es un speaker internacional y autor del bestseller Hacking Growth. Y junto a él y David Laviosa, co-host de este podcast, vamos a analizar las mejores estrategias para hacer crecer nuestros productos digitales, tanto en empresas grandes, big techs, como también en startups. Así que son todos bienvenidos a sumarse y a escuchar y hacer preguntas en vivo en esta charla que tenemos hoy. Voy a presentar al co-host de este podcast, que es David Laviosa. Hola David, ¿cómo estás?
¿Cómo andan todos? Bueno, bienvenidos, gracias por sumarse. La verdad que estamos muy contentos de arrancar con todo este primer podcast del año con un invitado de honor, así que vamos con todo y como siempre haciendo producto, que es lo que más nos gusta. Así que bienvenidos.
Bueno, gracias David. Y si estás de acuerdo, vamos a presentar a John y a introducirlo aquí en el estudio. Vamos a cambiar ahora la charla a inglés, ¿sí? Así que vamos a continuar a partir de ahora toda esta conversación en inglés. Luego vamos a compartir, tanto durante esta semana y la próxima, pequeños capítulos o pequeños cortos de esta charla que van a estar traducidos al español. Así que no se preocupen, aquellas personas que no sepan inglés, en breve van a tener también la versión traducida. John, it's a pleasure and a great honor to having you here. Please telling us how are you today and how's it going your tour for South America so far?
Oh, thank you, Pedro. It's great to be on with you. My tour is going well. I just arrived in Buenos Aires last night, and so it's nice to have the good warm summer here. Maybe even too hot, but I'm coming from the northern hemisphere where it's winter, so I'm still in the mode of liking the good hot weather. But I'm very excited to be in South America. I love it here. I spent a little bit of time in Buenos Aires a couple weeks ago. But yeah, since then have been to Santiago and then a couple of places in Brazil. And it's nice to be back here in Buenos Aires.
Okay, great.
You're going to go back with a nice tan.
Yeah. I leave in less than a week back for the Northern Hemisphere. I'll be going to Istanbul, so yeah, it'll be a little bit cold there, but that's okay.
Yeah. Change. Great. Okay, Sean. So starting to speak of growth and specifically of growth hacking, we wanted to ask you, and also for the audience that may not have read your book, what or how would you explain what growth hacking is as a concept in your own words, so that all of the audience can hear it from you?
Sure. Yeah. So growth hacking is really about how to unlock very rapid growth, of course, in your company. And what you're doing is you're taking a data-driven approach of lots of testing and iteration, and figuring out what works best across all parts of your growth engine. So a lot of the test and learn that we do with growth hacking has been common among marketers for a long time, but they really only do it at the top of the funnel. So they're doing it in advertising channels and maybe with different advertisements, maybe landing pages. But it turns out that the product is where the biggest opportunities for growth are. And so if you can do a better job of converting people to becoming a user, giving them a great experience, helping them get more engagement and better value from the product, getting them to invite their friends, even how you generate money from them, all of those things can be tested and optimized, and an improvement in any one area tends to make the whole machine work better. And so, yeah, that's what growth hacking is this very test-driven approach to all parts of the customer journey to maximize growth.
Great, a great way to explain it. You said you talked about marketing, product development. To what audience would you recommend your book, and why specifically?
Yeah, I think it's so we're almost 1 million readers on the book. So the audience has been very broad. It's probably broader than I expected. It's interesting because it's been popular in areas that I might not have expected. So even like, for example, my mother, who is a nurse, she read it and she understood how it would be applicable even in her job. So I think what we're really trying to do is we're trying to help someone understand cause and effect. So the relationship between what you do and what you're trying to achieve. So in medicine, of course, you're trying to make someone feel better, and there's lots of things you could do to make them feel better. But in growth, it's generally we're trying to accelerate a growth curve, but you can apply the methodology really in how can you make someone come back and use your product more often? How can you give them the right first time experience? But also, how can you more effectively reach them through advertising opportunities? So we're really talking about the scientific method. That's I'm the guy who coined growth hacking, but I didn't really invent anything. It's it's the scientific method that's been around since ancient Greek times, and so you can apply it in a surprising number of places. But as I said before, I think that the biggest opportunities for driving growth impact actually come on the product side. And most product people, I don't think are thinking in terms of fast, rapid test and learn processes. They're thinking, yes, we should measure things, and yes, we should have a lean approach to product development, but not in the sense of how many tests are we running each week, and we should probably be running, many, many more tests than we're currently running right now. And so product people will probably be the ones who benefit the most. But the truth is, for growth to work in a company, you actually need that. Yeah, I'll even back up a little bit. Growth fails in most companies. So this growth hacking approach fails in almost every company that tries it. And the reason is that it's not just, you get the product people to do it well. It's you need to get the whole company doing the approach well for it to really work. And so you need designers, you need your engineers, you need your data people, your copywriters, your marketers. You need really all of the parts of the company working together to experiment. And so really any of those roles, I think, benefit significantly from reading the book. But even them reading the book doesn't really help them that much be successful with it. It's really a lot of my international trip, my world trip is focused on the things that I can do in a live engagement with people to help them more effectively work together on growth. And that's what I'm excited about doing this week here in Buenos Aires.
Okay, great, Sean. One follow-up question there.
Yes.
You were saying that it's great for everybody, and that everybody should be doing growth simultaneously. Do you have any tips on how all those different teams can join forces? Because sometimes I've been working in growth for the last 8 years, and we have a growth team in marketing, another one in product, another one in UX or engineering. So sometimes we are all driving growth to different directions, and it's difficult to bring them all together. So I would appreciate if you have any tip on that.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the same thing I've seen in almost every company that tries to do growth, is that usually what happens is there's one growth team, and that initially they're trying to push experimentation in all parts of the customer journey, but usually it's the product team that starts to push them out, and as a result, they end up spending most of their time on marketing opportunities, and marketing is only good if you can convert, engage, retain, and monetize. And so as a result, even the marketing stops having so much impact. And so and without impact, then people give up on the whole thing. So how do you actually get them all working effectively together? I've developed a workshop that works really effectively, where in an entire 8-hour period, I have usually up to 10 companies that are going through the program together. And so each company sends five people. And so they're sending usually a head of product, head of marketing, a designer, a developer, head of engineering, usually, maybe a data person. And through the course of the day, they are working on growth together. So they're planning what are the best opportunities. They're starting to actually come up with experiments. They're collaborating on how they implement those experiments. And so through the course of a day, they can start to develop the habit that will hopefully carry over beyond the one day, and often does. Most of the time it does. And then the habit eventually leads to a culture in the business that is more cross-functional, is more growth-oriented, and that culture is what's required to be successful with growth. And so that's a program that I've been doing for about 6 years now. I first developed it with the Microsoft Office 365 team, and have continued to deliver it to a lot of companies, often in a private workshop setting. But I've found a way to do 10 companies at the same time, and it brings the price way down and is almost as effective as doing a single company. And so, yeah, that's the program I'm excited about doing as I travel around the world here.
Sounds like a great program.
Sean, do you recommend these workshops maybe for big companies, or startup as well have the same problems that you mentioned?
So it's a lot harder for big companies, of course. Again, we're talking about culture change and habits change. And so in big companies, culture change is almost impossible. So I tend to think it works best for teams or companies that are maybe less than 50 employees. In Santiago, we had one of the biggest companies in Chile that attended as well. And so I think that's great when a big company tries to do it. And I think, and especially if they're working on a smaller kind of division within that company. But growth is one of those things that the earlier you try to build the right habits and culture, the more likely you're going to be successful. And so if you don't have product market fit, so you're really, really early stage, that's probably too early for the program. And so it's once you know that the customers on the product really love the product, and then the goal is, okay, how do I get a lot more customers on the product? That's the perfect time to start to think about a program like this.
Okay, it's more like for a startup with product market fit and big companies.
Yeah, so I would say
teams.
Typically it's typically for companies from, say, 10 employees to 100 employees. But and once you go over 100 employees, then usually I recommend a private workshop. Of course, it's a lot more expensive, but it's if they're 1,000 employees or 10,000 employees, they can usually afford to do a private workshop, and then I'll work only with their team and often hundreds of people at the same time within that company. But for a company like up to 100 employees, I think this format makes it very affordable for them, and still probably 80-90% as effective as a private workshop, but for 10% of the cost.
Okay, great. Next question. How do you see product teams are applying this growth practice outside the US? Do you see some differences in the way of working in Silicon Valley and Europe and here in Latin America?
So it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some of the some of the best companies are outside of the U.S. I've been really impressed. I spent 2 weeks ago, I did a private program with Nubank, and Nubank it has shocked me how effectively they approach growth. They really, the foundation of a lot of the work that they're doing is based on a survey that I put out years ago that helps them not just validate product market fit, but actually understand what gives them product market fit. And with that information, they can really orient in a lot of their efforts around improving that product market fit. And so I actually, it's amazing to have someone who takes a methodology that I put out there, and then I go and see how they're applying it, and I start to learn from them the application. And so I think Nubank was really impressive that way. But I've seen others. Rappi, I think, is very impressive in Latin America. And then a lot of Chinese companies are very impressive. In fact, by far we've sold our most books in China. We've sold over 500,000 books in China, and so they've adopted the approach and are dominating with things like WeChat and a lot of the platforms that are in China are I think growing faster and are bigger than the US platforms a lot of times. So it's definitely not going to. A lot of the approaches were pioneered in Silicon Valley, but they've spread well beyond Silicon Valley and are really impacting growth in a lot of countries and a lot of different categories.
And what's your opinion about these recently changes that Airbnb did in their structure, where this product management role is not the core piece of the team, and they put the product marketing manager in front of their organization? What do you think about that? What's your opinion about these changes?
So I honestly had not heard about those changes. So maybe you can explain a little bit more. And I mean, from what you're saying, the problem is even with titles, when you say, product marketing and product management sort of changing importance of roles, like it seems every company defines product marketing different. Every company defines product management different. So even in that case, it's really hard to know, are they just putting a different name on the same set of responsibilities that we may think of as a growth role, for example? What I have seen at Airbnb and a number of like Uber, a number of really fast growing marketplaces, is that they over time have combined the growth and product roles more into a single structure, which actually makes sense if you think of how do you enhance the value of the product. In a network effect, probably the best thing you can do to enhance the value of the product is network density and getting more people participating in that network. So growth and product are both ways of improving the value of the product. And so I think that's probably what's driven a lot of those changes.
Okay, thank you. Dave, you have some impressions, maybe next question?
Just a comment. You just broke my heart, Sean. I work at Laviosa, and Rob is our main competitor.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I'm just joking. Sean, I wanted to ask you about what would you say are like the big steps towards growth hacking? You just said a company or a startup needs to have a product market fit. So what should they do next from your point of view towards growth hacking?
Yeah, I think that the step a lot of companies skip over is actually spending the time to understand the growth engine. And so they so quickly jump into improving it that if they don't actually understand how they grow today, they're less likely to be able to truly improve it going forward. And so I always recommend, and in my workshops, the first first like 30% of the day is really digging deeply to understand your growth engine and understand how customers experience value in your product, quantifying how they experience value, and then thinking about all of the different levers that enhance that value. And so that would be my first recommendation, is just try to deeply understand both quantitatively and qualitatively how the business grows. And so your business, for example, I had an interesting situation where I'm not sure, like, the teams always recognize this, but this would be an example of like how I discovered Rappi. I don't want to keep throwing their name into the mix, but I hadn't even really heard of them until I was staying in Brazil, and I asked my hotel if they had some glue that I could borrow. I was applying for a visa to India, and I needed some glue to glue my picture on there. And they said, "We don't have any glue, but you can get some in Rappi in like a few minutes." And so I downloaded it and was able to learn about Rappi and then satisfy what my need was. So again, maybe that was only one time, or maybe it turns out that a big chunk of people who discover a service are discovering it through a recommendation from a hotel, for example. And so when you can start to understand all of the routes to discovery and the needs and how those needs are satisfied with the product, then you can start to see the big picture and think about, this is one area that we could really improve and turn up, and how do we prioritize a set of experiments around that. But if you don't take the time to truly understand, then you're probably just randomly experimenting everywhere, and that's much less likely to be effective than saying, okay, now that we understand how the whole engine works, what's our biggest opportunity for improvement? How do we go really deep in understanding what drives the customer action, what prevents the customer action, and come up with a set of experiments to drive improvement in that area.
Great. So to sum up, deep dive into your customer behavior needs and to understand all the quantitative and qualitative data, so you can then take action into improving that growth engine you have.
Yeah, and I think, just to put that in context, I think before growth teams, who did that? Who looked at the whole picture of the business? Really nobody. The product team looked at one little picture, the marketing team looked at another little picture, and they all just worked in their little areas of influence without anyone thinking about the big picture of how it all fits together. But when you understand the big picture, I'll give you an example, actually. When I was at LogMeIn, I was really struggling with being able to spend money to grow the business. And it turned out that we had raised $10 million, and I couldn't spend more than $10,000 per month on advertising with a positive return on investment. But when I really analyzed the data, I saw that the majority of people who were signing up for the product were never actually using the product. And so with that information, I could go to our CEO and say, hey, we need to fix this issue. And my CEO said, stop trying to do marketing, which is kind of a weird thing for him to say to me. And then he said to the product team, this was even weirder, stop building the product. Stop the whole product roadmap. We're going to put that on ice and take a break from adding new features to the product. I want the product team and the marketing team to come together and focus all of your energy on this one problem of getting people who sign up to actually use the product. And when we did that in just 3 months, we were able to take a very small business and turn the corner to where now we increased the sign up to usage rate by 1,000%. And that gave me the ability to go back. No new creativity on the marketing side. I just went back and tried the same things. Now I could spend $1 million a month with a very fast payback on those dollars. So in 3 months, all that money was back. And that was only 20% of our new users. The majority of the new users came in through word of mouth from all the people who had a great experience with the product. Now they started telling their friends. And so that business very quickly, once the CEO said, we all need to focus on the area that really matters, we were able to get on a growth trajectory that eventually helped us sell the business for over $4 billion. But I think if we hadn't had that moment of figuring out what was really holding back growth, the business probably wouldn't have sold for $100 million. We would have just stayed very small, and so I think that's the beauty when you look at the big picture and you can really focus the creative energies and just execution of the team on the things that really matter. That's when you can unlock massive growth in a business.
Well, great example, and it's true. Sometimes it's really difficult to take a step back to look to the big picture and understand where to optimize. We are trying to optimize everywhere, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So yeah,
exactly.
Great. One follow-up question, Sean. A couple of years ago, when we were talking about growth, I mean everybody, usually people used to talk about funnels also. And I think that has evolved along the years. What would you say are some maybe up-to-date artifacts that people could use for this type of experience? I know you have a lot of on that topic, but complementing the growth hacking, I've heard about growth loops or growth strategy flywheels. What would you say about that?
Yeah, so I think Reforge, of course, has kind of popularized this concept of loops. But even before Reforge came along, there was a book called Viral Loop that talked about the importance of loops. But I don't think it's loops or funnels. I think it's loops and funnels that ultimately it starts with, the biggest driver of long-term retention on a product is a great first-time experience. And that great first-time experience is really what the funnel should be driving people toward. And so if you can activate them with a great first-time experience, they're much more likely to come back and use the product again. And so, but you can then also think of it in terms of an engagement loop. And how do you drive ongoing usage through the engagement loop? And that's where a book that I love on that is Nir Eyal's book, Hooked, gives you a really good hook loop model for driving engagement. So there's books on the individual topics like Viral Loop or Hooked, but there are a number of loops and funnels that ultimately become the model of what a growth engine looks like. And that's exactly where I was saying, you start with trying to model your growth engine the best that you can, and that gives you essentially a view of the playing field of where your opportunities are to focus your testing efforts. And then the one last thing that I would say is when focusing the testing efforts, I like the log me in example that I gave, to be able to go really deep into one area, and it's really becomes like solving a puzzle where you're running lots of usability testing and surveys and studying data and maybe even looking at how competitors are doing things, but just getting as many ideas to what's going on and how to improve it. And a lot of times you end up getting a big breakthrough insight that then leads to some really good test ideas. And then those test ideas obviously are what drive a significant improvement in your growth rate.
Okay, and talking about Rappi, Pedido Ya, what do you think are the key reasons why companies like DoorDash in the US manage to capture such a significant portion of the market?
It's going to be different for each product, but I actually just worked in that category myself not in that specific category, but in a network effect business called Bounce out of Portugal. What I try to do is go back and forth from teaching growth to doing growth, so that I can get good at explaining it, but also stay fresh in my skills. And so I take interim VP growth roles every year or two. And so the Bounce one, what I really learned was that network density makes a huge difference. so Bounce, to give a little bit of clarity, is a luggage storage network where they have 10,000 partners on the network. And when you have in a city enough partners, you dominate that network. You can beat them. You can beat everyone else in search. You also have the network itself becomes a driver of growth. So every one of the partners in a city is often putting signage and stickers, and that's driving people into the funnel. And so a lot of times with a network effect, whether it's a food delivery network or baggage storage, it's the bigger the network gets, the faster it starts to grow. And so that's why they're so competitive a lot of times in the beginning of these networks. Is you're trying to get that momentum going before everyone else. And so I think, for Bounce, one of the big advantages that Bounce had was during the pandemic, when a lot of their competitors were maybe panicking, how are they going to survive in something that's tied to the travel industry? The Bounce team was really aggressive about continuing to build networks so that when the pandemic ended, they had a much bigger network. And it was really, while I was there, I believe it was probably the fastest growing company in the world of a company of its revenue size. And so, it's just beautiful when you see all of the pieces working together. But I spent a lot of time understanding the engine before I got in there and started messing with things to change the engine.
Great. And just a small follow-up question. And in other categories, like maybe software as a service or subscription-based business models, you see these similarities to this network effect. What are the key factors that you see in these kind of categories?
Yeah, I think in what I would say the commonality on both sides, like with a network effect and SaaS or whatever the product may be, speed to value is a huge factor. So it's not just funnel optimization as we often think about, but it's how quickly can I get someone who's interested in the product to have a great experience with the product. And just like in the case of Log Me In that I explained. So Log Me In was SaaS. And I just gave you the example of what happens when you're able to not just get speed to value, but a lot more people to value, and they work together. If you can get them to a valuable experience faster, you're going to get a lot more of them to that valuable experience before they give up. And so the same thing happens in a network effect business. It's just your ability to get them to a valuable experience is also dependent on your ability to build a big network. So if you're Uber, for example, and you have 5 drivers in a city, the first time someone's using Uber in that city and they have to wait 2 hours for a car, their speed to value was too long and the network can't sustain. So you have to build the network big enough so that the new demand side of the network is able to quickly have a great experience with it, and that's going to cause them to keep using it, and that's going to keep your supply side engaged on there. So you have a lot more balanced challenges in a network effect business, but there is a lot of similarity in both cases that you need to take a new customer and get them to a great experience very quickly.
Great, Sean. I like the concept you just mentioned, speed to value. How would you measure that? It's like when you launch a new feature, how much time it gets or it takes until the customer really values it, or something like that?
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I'm generally talking about a new customer on a new product for them, but it actually does work the same way with features. So if I put a feature out there and someone says, "Oh, I want to try that feature," and they try that feature and they can't figure out how to make it work, and they're playing with it, every additional second that it takes for them to get the value, they're more likely to say, "Oh, it's not worth it. I don't even want to try that feature," and they give up on it. And so each feature within the product is kind of the same thing as a new person on the overall product. And so even the concept of product market fit works down to a feature level, that just because you build the feature and you can get someone to get the right experience with the feature, if they don't like it, they're not going to use that feature anymore. And that feature then does not have product market fit in a sense, or feature product fit, I guess you would say. But ultimately, you need to retain usage to be able to add value. And so the first challenge is to get someone to try something, but it's up to the thing that they're trying to be good enough to make them want to come back and use it again. And so whether you're looking at the overall product or on a feature level, that's an important dynamic there. And then the speed to value is just really on the first time that they try the product or the first time that they try the feature. They're just much more likely to give up if they've never experienced that value before. And they're also needing to learn it at the same time. And so if they're in the process of learning it, that they may give up if it's too difficult. And that was really the case with Log Me In, is that it was really hard to get to that first valuable experience, and that's why 95% of the people were giving up. But eventually, we made it so much easier that we were able to get it where it still doesn't sound great. It was only 50% of the people who had a good experience with it, or who had the right experience with the product. But that's still 10 times more than the original 5%.
Okay, great. Really interesting. I think it joins with the concept on giving a step back to have the overall look and to try to understand where you have to optimize, because in subscription programs, I think it really applies, maybe not to all new customers with new products, but with your existing base of customers, so you can retain them better and to give them these new features and try to optimize the speed to value. So, well, great new concept. I haven't heard it. Great.
Yeah, no, it's really, to me, it's the number. Whenever I take on a new project, the very first thing I'm looking at is there an opportunity to improve the speed to value? Because that's my fastest way and cheapest way to be able to quickly help a company grow faster.
The best combination.
Yeah, exactly.
You just mentioned again product market fit, and we've read with Peter that you have a test, the Sean Ellis test, for evaluating product market fit. Would you care?
And we use it.
Oh, good.
So we wanted to bring that concept to the audience. So can you explain a little bit about it?
Absolutely, and I'll give you a little backstory on how I came up with it too. But that's the thing that I was saying, that Nubank basically, from the very early days at Nubank, they used that question to hone and improve their service, and they continue to use it quite a bit. So the idea is that you take people who have gotten to that valuable experience in your product, so they activated, and then you ask them, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? And you're trying to find those who say, I would be very disappointed if I could no longer use this product. And so I give them the choice: very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed. And if enough people say, I would be very disappointed without the product, then you have product market fit. And if everyone says, I'd be somewhat disappointed, what they're really telling you is that it's a nice to have, and you can't build a successful business on a nice to have. Now, the challenge is, if you have lots of people who say, I would be very disappointed without this product, and then ultimately they stop using the product, I would actually focus more on the action of stopping using the product. But generally, if they say, I would be very disappointed if I could no longer use this product, they're going to keep using it. And so one of the big benefits of the question is that you can very quickly, in one day, learn, do you have product market fit or not, and start to execute with the confidence of product market fit. Whereas if you're studying retention cohorts, that's the other way to be able to validate it. You might need to wait 6 months to see if you retain people to know if you have product market fit. And so the survey gives you a much faster answer, and then has the added benefit of, now that you have a group of people who say, I would be very disappointed without this product, you can go in and study those people. You can learn, are they men or are they women? Are they this income or are they that income? How did they use the product? What is the benefit that they got? what did they use before? And you start to figure out, this is the profile, this is the use case, this is the benefit of my ideal customer. And I need to really optimize my whole growth engine on those customers. And so that's the real benefit of a survey, is you get all that additional information, versus in studying just the usage data, you don't really have any context into why.
Great. I think one of the challenges startups have is that they can't realize when they have product market fit. Sometimes they evaluate revenue or customers or other metrics, but this is a tangible way in which they can try to understand better that. So it's a great tool, and like Peter said, we love it.
Perfect. And the one thing, just to build on what you said there, if they're inaccurate in their assessment of product market fit, they could very easily put themselves out of business. So the number one cause of startup failure is trying to grow without product market fit. And so one thing I didn't say before is that I'm generally looking for 40% of the users to say, I would be very disappointed without this product. And so when I see 40%, I can almost always grow those businesses. And when I see less than 40%, I really struggle. I will tell you, though, I once had a product that was only 7%, and I got it to 40% in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it's not the end of the world if you're not there. Yeah. So, yeah, now just to give you a hint on how I did that, I studied those 7% who said I'd be very disappointed, figured out how they were using the product, the benefit that they were getting, and then I changed the messaging for the next group of people to highlight the product to be, this is what the product is truly good at, and then change the onboarding, the speed to value, to make sure that the first experience in the product was what the messaging was promising the product would do. And so this was a product that had kind of 4 or 5 things you could do. So we just narrowed it down to one of those. And of course, my product team would have said, no way am I going to kill all the other things. So I didn't say kill. I just said, let's just first convert them on this thing, and then afterwards we can show them all the other stuff. But just that change alone, the next group of people we surveyed, it was at 40%. 6 months later, it was at 60%. And that business reached the $1 billion valuation within a few years after that. And so when I first saw that 7%, I was literally thinking, oh my God, how do I quit? I'm committed to work with these guys for 6 months. How do I leave? But fortunately, I stayed because the path to 40% was a pretty fast one.
Great success, and also a great example on how to bring the qualitative data and the quantitative data and to use it towards product market fit. So, great.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, and it's an example of put the perception of the user or the customer in the first place. Okay, we have some questions from our product leaders community here at Product Hub.
Okay, sure.
We selected one from David Moran, and he asked, what are the main challenges in a product launch today?
Yeah, I think the main challenge is I've always been surprised when people tell me that, well, a product launch, you need to make it really crazy and get a lot of attention and get a lot of people trying the product, and we call it kind of like a big bang launch. And I think that's a mistake. I think the product launch starts before the product even gets built. You're going through validation, you're making sure that the problem you're solving is a problem that's important to people, and you're engaging with them. You're showing them the solution you plan to build. And so by the time you come out with your solution, you should actually have a pretty good group of early testers who want to take a look at it, because they actually helped guide you in building it in the first place. And so to me, I never think of a product launch as a big, exciting event. I think of it as just now it's available. Now we get the moment of truth to where we start to get some feedback on the product. And so, if you don't have enough people that way, then usually the first thing that I would do is find people who are looking for that type of a solution, and it's pretty easy to reach them with Google search or, wherever they might be actively seeking that solution, and spend money to acquire them without obsessing on how do I spend $1 million and how do I get millions of them, because you don't even know if the product's good yet. And so your goal at that point is, I want to get enough people on the product to then be able to run that survey and start to figure out, does anyone actually care about this product? And as soon as I find even one person who says, oh, I would be very disappointed without the product, now I have something tangible. That's a much more exciting event than launch, than the product is available. The product is available. We put way too much emphasis. That's just like any other day. That's kind of a boring day. But I think for product and engineering people, a lot of times, I know they work hard to get the product to that level, and they want to have a party around it and really celebrate it and be excited, but they should be curious. That should be the bigger driver. It's like, now we finally get to find out if we've created something of value for people, and now we start to get to live in the world of feedback, and that's exciting. Like, to me, that's way more exciting than standing around the office drinking some cervezas with the team celebrating the release of a new set of code.
The product launch is more like a discovery process, or it's part of the discovery process than a milestone for the business. Okay, a great example. Okay, David, you have some follow-up questions?
Just a comment on that. Sometimes teams struggle with launches because they are running for months until the launch, and afterwards they say, like, what's next? And they don't know what to do. So it's a great input. We are not working for the launch, but we're working to acquire customers, filter them in some sort of way, and understanding what works best, so we can optimize and start driving product market fit, and afterwards growth.
And product market fit. Yes. If you're going to celebrate something, product market fit would be a good thing to celebrate. Okay. Go ahead, Pedro. Sorry.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Sean, we are finishing this interview, and we have some personal questions to finish.
Sure.
What are the next steps in your life? It's an open question.
Next steps in my life. I just have a big passion right now on and it may be personal and it may be business, but like for me, personal and business kind of come together on this. I'm really passionate about figuring out this cross-functional challenge. I see growth hacking being such powerful thing when it works well, and I see the majority of companies failing when they try to do it, and it's a really fun challenge for me to be working on. And so whether I'm working on it as the guy who goes into a company in an interim VP growth role and tries to make it work, or as the guy who's doing a trip around the world working with hundreds of companies to help them do it, and ideally help them in a way where I don't have to be involved with the company, that's my way of being able to make a lot more impact. And so, for me, a lot of people kind of think I'm in my 50s now, and so this might be the time I'd be slowing down and spending more time on the beach, whatever it might be. But if I were to retire, I would probably want to travel and do interesting things. And why would I retire when I'm traveling right now, when I'm doing interesting things and meeting interesting companies, and it's really fun. And that's what's next for me. Is probably I'll keep doing this until I solve the problem, and then I'll figure out the next problem to focus on.
You're living the dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Also, Sean, do you want to share the next dates of your events here in Latin America? I don't know if you're doing events or like private workshops, but
yeah. So we have an event tomorrow night. I think if you go to the WinClap site, they're my partners. I don't remember exactly what the URL is on it, but what I try to do is have a part. Oh, perfect. Yeah, what I try to do is have a partner in each country, so that if teams need coaching and help afterwards, that they can continue to help the companies. And obviously, if I'm if I'm going to all these countries around the world, I wouldn't be a very good helper and coach after the fact. And so, yeah, that they're a great team. And so what I always try to do is make the initial event really affordable. I want it to be big and open. And so I don't think it costs very much money. And so that's literally tomorrow night. And I'll probably do some book signing and take a bunch of selfies, and I'll do a presentation there. And so hopefully some of the listeners in the Buenos Aires area can come to that. There's still some tickets left. And then the next day I'll be doing a workshop, and we have several companies already in the workshop, but there's probably room for another 1 or 2 companies. And then the day after that, I'm doing a masterclass, and it's a 3-hour masterclass where I go really deep into this. I actually think the workshop is more powerful because, again, it's taking the cross-functional team at the company, and they're working together the whole day on growth. And so they come out of there with some great ideas and a plan of how they'll execute growth going forward. But the masterclass is valuable as well. Like in 3 hours, I think I really equip people to be able to lead a growth effort in their companies. And I brought the prices down quite a bit for Argentina versus what it costs in Europe and some of the other countries, just because I know the economy has not been great here, and I want to, my goal is to make the programs accessible. And if someone wants to go and the price is still a little too high, then reach out to me, and I can probably even hook them up with a deal if we still have additional space left.
Great, Sean. That's great to hear, and I think our audience is going to be really excited to join you and to get their books autographed. So great.
Awesome. I'm excited to do it. I love doing it.
Great. One last question to wrap up. Do you want to share any message to the audience related to growth? Maybe some recommendations for their careers or for implementing growth hacking?
Yeah, I'll reiterate a couple of things. One, focus on value delivery, and that's where a North Star metric is really effective for capturing value. So research what a North Star metric is and make sure you have one in your business. And then it's obviously testing that drives growth. And so just hold yourself accountable for how much testing you're doing. And if you figure out that you're doing 2 tests per week right now, figure out how to do 4 tests per week, and more testing equals more learning. And but yeah, to really drive the impact, you're going to need to be able to test across that full growth engine, and that's going to require the whole company working together, and that's the part that's hard. But when it works well, if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, when you get your broad team working well together on growth, that's when you make massive impact with your business. And for those people who are on a team, when you're growing fast and making big impact, there's nothing more fun and meaningful. And so it's worth the effort, but just recognize it's going to be hard to get that cross-functional growth piece going.
Great. So if they have any difficulties, they know they can reach to you and your workshops.
They can reach to me for another 3 days. After that, it'll be a little harder to help, because I'll be in India or Singapore or wherever one of my future stops is. But in April, I will be back home.
Okay.
So go ahead, Pedro.
Sean, we are very, very grateful, and again, it's an honor to having you and this opportunity to interview you. So we say thanks, a big thanks to you, and have a great time here in Buenos Aires and in your South American tour.
I will. And by the way, I've been to Buenos Aires one time before. Facebook had me meet with some of their clients a few years ago, but I hadn't spent very much time. And this time I've really spent time, walking around Palermo and the food and the city. This is one of my favorite cities in the world now. So I'll definitely be back.
You have to try the meat a parrilla, and the wine. The wine is, I don't know if you like wine, but it's excellent. So we recommend it.
I've had some wine and some meat already, and
Okay.
Not before the workshop.
I made a promise to myself a little while ago not to eat red meat, and that was a big mistake before coming to Argentina. So I even had a little bit at lunch today. So I'm sure I'll have a bit more before I leave.
Okay, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. It's been an honor to have you here.
Thank you, and see you the next year in your next tour.
Okay, sounds good.
Sean.
Bye.
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 Bueno, finalizamos aquí este episodio, primer episodio del podcast. Así que hay un gran gracias para Sean, David. Gracias también por sumarte. Y bueno, gracias a la audiencia que nos está escuchando.
Gracias a todos, gente.
Chao, chao.